Hello and good day. This is Charlie Chewy Baca, your of recovery and native anthropologist, and today we're talking about rites of passage again, but the one and how I became an alcoholic. All right, so yeah, I went through a puberty ritual to become an alcoholic. How did that happen? Actually, a lot of us go through the same process. We really do. Now, the first stage in a rite of passage is stripping of old identity. A real important thing to consider is, what does a child's world consist of? Well, they play. Well, they play with what? Well, back in my day, toys. Whether it was a rock that was a truck or something, or a stick that was a toy gun or something like that, we played. These days, a lot of kids play with video games and all that, but even that changes. All right, so what happens about age 10, 11, or 12? Well, the kids stop playing with toys. Nobody has to tell them. It just happens all by itself. So if you're a parent of a tween and your kid was, say like my child, from the age of 4 to like 12, he was like Lego king. He would build Legos out of everything. He would beat anything out of Legos. It was incredible, great engineering skills. All right, and then also by age 12, it just stops. Nobody had to tell him. He just stopped playing with Legos and moved on. So that's a real important cue that, guess what? Our child's starting to go through their own puberty ceremony, whether we're there or not. All right, so stripping of old identity. What things was I stripped of? Well, I was more into, I had a few toys and everything, but a lot of them got taken away because after my folks had divorced, we had to move everything into a storage unit. And everything, all my toys, everything. We stayed in an incredibly small trailer, and so I had very little things. In fact, Bread and More, I just recalled that's what happened to little Star Wars action figures in the speeder. I remembered it got put in the storage facility, and payments weren't made. Whose responsibility that is, I'm not sure. But we lost everything in the storage. So anyway, but I did have my comic books. I was a huge, and still am, Marvel comic fan. All right, my whole world was Marvel comics. I had my little box of all my collector's issues, real early issues of Spider-Man, X-Men, Avengers, all that stuff. Then I had a couple of other boxes of just my monthly comics that were coming out that I still really enjoy. So my whole world was Marvel comics. And then about age 12, I took him to one of the only bookstores in Flagstaff, Arizona, that would buy those things, and they bought my comics. They gave me some money, and I got a little cassette boombox. It wasn't like a big giant one, but because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be walking around junior high, with my cassette player, listening to Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and I wanted to be cool. So I had a vision of what I wanted to become. All right, so other things that changed. I stopped playing with toys, gave up all my comic books. Less interest in family things, and that's a natural progression, right? Peers become really important in a puberty ceremony when a person's growing up, and family sometimes takes a back burner. All right, there was no parental supervision. And this is just part of growing up in an alcoholic home, as my parents were already divorced at that point, and actually by age 14, my father he had already passed away. He had already died, drowning drunk, but no supervision. So I was pretty much left free to wander around wherever. Me and my friend Gerald, we used to ride bikes in Flagstaff like at 2 or 3 in the morning. We'd be riding our 10 speeds going all over the place. We used to like going up into the rich neighborhoods and just checking it out, probably daydreaming, and shit like that, with no supervision whatsoever. So that was gone. No parental supervision. Home was unsafe, living with alcoholics. So it was actually better to be, outdoors then. Now, remember, I just wanted to be cool. I didn't want to be a gangbang or anything like that. So my role models were a bit different. My role models were actually, the Three Stooges, John Belushi, particularly in Animal House. Not necessarily a good one unless you want to be an alcoholic. And the Three Stooges, of course. So I just wanted to be cool. And guitar players, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Tony Iommi. Those were my role models. My childhood clothing, all those were stripped away. I always had the hand-me-down 70s button-up shirts with the big-ass collars and the dorky plaid bell-bottoms, and then middle school came, and you knew a new uniform. What was that uniform? Well, basically, I bugged parents enough, and I got some straight legs, Levi straight legs. Instead of wearing the $2 shoes from Yellow Front that I wore in elementary school, now in junior high, I had bugged my mom enough to get me some Nikes. Now, they were just the very bottom of the barrel, entry-level Nikes, but they still had the swoosh. So that was an important thing. And I had gone to an April Wine and a Boston concert in Flagstaff when they used to have concerts there. So I had at least a couple of concert shirts, right? And then I would get concert shirts from other relatives or friends whenever I could. So that was my uniform. All right, so I'm stripped of my old identity. What is the training? All right, so I'm not a kid anymore. I'm training to be an adult, or at least an adult that is in my mind an adult. While training with new tools for a new status, everybody who's cool had to learn how to drink. They had to control their drinking, so I practiced on that. And boy, those first few drinks, man, I remember that feeling. I was like, this is what it means to be cool. This is an adult, man. This is what I'm talking about. This is, oh man, so much fun. Not worry, no pain. Just feel good. We're all cool now. All right. Getting high as well too. You got to learn how. This was just part of being an adult. You had to learn how to control those. Even if it meant like banging my head against a wall, where that insanity definition. Do the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So I was starting to get arrested. That was part of my process of becoming an adult. I think at Flagstaff, I was arrested like 13 or 14 times for illegal consumption and failure to appear in court. I mean, that was really bad. That's really bad. That's just with Flagstaff. That's primarily where I did all my drinking. Must learn how to, practice communicating with peers. New lingo. I had to learn all the slang. I had to find out how to talk to females. I had to learn how to talk to other women. And they were the same as me. They were partiers too. So we hung out with like-minded people. Training becomes more important than school. Being cool, in other words, became more important than being in school. Particularly after my dad had died. Everybody at the junior high knew what happened, or at least in my mind. So I just, probably depression, grief as well too, and drinking and using, I dropped out, And I just continued to party. Drinking was my coping skill tool. Other people in the Rite of Passage, how they're learning to manage their emotions, learning to what they want to develop a career in, or how they want to make a living, all this stuff. They have a toolbox that they're putting tools in the Rite of Passage. I only had one tool, right? And that was the bottle and a bong, probably, and eventually a guitar, which is still important to me, but that was my coping skills. Those were the only tools in my box, was booze and weed and LSD. A lot of LSD. Who was my medicine man in my own puberty ritual, my own Rite of Passage? Actually, I had a very traditional American medicine man to teach me all the ins and outs of being a man, an alcoholic in American culture. And that traditional American medicine man was the goddamn TV. Because that's where I got all my notions of being a man, was from TV. I was in the mid 80s, right? And that's or the 80s, actually 1980 to 87, a really long Rite of Passage to when I quit drinking. And right at that time was when the cable boxes came out with like 150, 200 channels, and we were very poor, but we managed to have one. And that's how that's how I did it. In fact, I remember one year, for a couple of years, I think we spliced into somebody else's cable network. We had the box, but I don't know how it happened. But anyway, that was my medicine man. Popular culture, the TV. So then my new status was, well, now I'm a young man and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I have no employable skills. I don't have a high school degree. I dropped out in 9th grade. I didn't even make it through Project New Start, which was the alternative school for screw-ups, right? Like myself, juvenile delinquents. I couldn't maintain any kind of significant relationship with the opposite sex. In fact, every time I did hook up with somebody, I was always drunk. Always, every single time, always drunk. We were both always drunk. Family distrusts me. I was the fall guy in the family. I was the focus of a lot of blame. There was possible felon status. I was getting in a lot of trouble just for drinking, not for being a hardcore criminal or anything, just for drinking. So that was basically how I became an alcoholic, ritual-wise. My guide was the TV, and it's a simple process, but it's very strong, because everything we learn in that training stage of a rite of passage that's who we become. We don't become what we fantasize about. We become what we train. I wanted to be a rock star and go to college and, have all these college chicks and all this stuff. But what was I actually doing? I was playing the same 3 or 4 chords on my guitar, drunk, high, unemployable. I made no effort to get a GED or to get into school or anything. So we become what we train, not what we think. All that stuff became important later when I did get sober, and that's another process we'll look at as well too. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.